Hi. Today I'm interviewing step artist extraordinaire in the ITG FA canon, Mr. Mute
Howdy.
Sims. Welcome to the show. I guess it is now.
And just to clarify, I am allowed to vape during this.
Yes, absolutely. This is a pro vape channel, Vape Nation, if you
Hey,
will.
listen, the science is out on that, okay? It could be safe.
Potential to be safe. So anyway, can you tell us a little bit, an introduction of yourself? Like, how'd you get into dance games? How'd you get into stepping? Um, that stuff.
Yeah, sure. Dance games been playing since October of 2003. So, a minute. That's a DDR pun. Get it?
No, I don't.
Little seventh mix joke for you folks out there. But I actually got started on sixth mix for the PS2, as so many people did. Um, Graduating from high school, my high school graduation party, some friends who played in the olden days, they brought some soft mats and DDR Max. I played it once, failed Exotic Ethnic on light, said this shit sucks, and then inexplicably, like a couple months later, when I was freshman year of college, I decided to buy a couple of soft mats and was hooked immediately.
Mhm.
Couldn't even tell you
Hell yeah.
why. And then
There's something about it.
about a year later, I discovered we had two machines on campus, a really nice Max 2 and a really nice Extreme machine. So started playing
Hmm.
at the arcade and basically never looked back from there. And
Hell
got
yeah.
it. So when I moved back to Milwaukee in early '05, we had a really nice local arcade that had DDR Extreme, a couple of other rhythm games. We had Para Para. We had
Oh, you
Dance
had a
Freak.
para machine?
We had Dance Freaks. We had Percussion Freaks third mix.
Hell yeah, dude. That's
It was
awesome.
it was lit, and then eventually we got a Supernova cab along with the Extreme cab, and we had an ITG2 upgrade cab. So what's funny is I initially didn't like ITG. I thought
Really?
because the Fantastic window was too tight.
Yeah.
Compared to the Perfect window, it sure is.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I made the mistake of picking Euphoria on Expert, like one of the first times I played it, and I was like,
Oh no.
I don't know about this.
What are these? No, this color. What's teal?
These
What's a
are
teal
orange.
note?
Holy crap! But a little bit later, yeah, I was actually like pretty steadfast DDR fanboy until R21 came out, and then some friends of mine who played much more like Stepmania keyboard than I did, which was none. They brought in some, paddable files. I use paddable in quotation marks, of course.
Yeah.
But from there it was like, oh, this song's cool, or maybe I could make a slightly better chart. And I like song XYZ that I listen to in my free time, and maybe I'll make a chart to that. So
Okay.
that being so easy, just toss it on a USB drive. Got into making charts in June of 2007. So I've been stepping for almost 14 years now.
14. Jesus.
Almost, yeah.
Your stepping career is going into high school now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
almost. Yeah, my first step chart is getting almost old enough to drive.
damn. That's insane. Holy shit. We are all dinosaurs here.
Yeah, I mean, me especially. Yeah, I'm 36.
36. Damn,
Yeah,
you are very young looking for 36.
I'm well preserved. Yes, I'm aware. Thanks. Diet and
It's
exercise. I'm just kidding. It's not. It's luck.
It's like, yeah, no, I wouldn't have guessed you look very young for your age.
Most people don't. So
You know,
pray to
that's
God.
good.
Pray to God that keeps happening.
One thing I wanted to get into. So you have a very long
Yeah.
Stepmania, the very long
Oh
Stepmania.
yeah, Stepmania career. Yeah.
You have a very long, I guess, dance game ITG career, right? Could you, I guess, describe how your views have changed over time, kind of going from a new person to like a household name, and and beyond? Because actually, I do think that you've actually lived kind of like becoming a household name, and then maybe not updating yourself so much, and then I guess branding yourself, not rebranding yourself, that's a weird way to say it, but like with Mute Sims X and X2, I noticed that your tech has been a lot more FA, Right.
adventurous kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So I guess your comments on all that.
yeah. It I already kind of hinted at this, but I mean, yeah. Over the years, like I said, initially I was a staunch DDR fan. Didn't really like ITG, and then come time for custom stuff, yeah, that all kind of started changing, and pretty quickly after making charts for a year or so. One of the charts we're going to look at a little bit later here is going to be kind of the first one that really, I guess, put me on the map, I guess you would say, which was I Love You from one of the Jet Set Radio soundtracks, Hideki Naganuma. And that won the R21 Freak Scholarship Step File competition. So I actually won a cash prize, which was really cool. And from there,
Yeah.
R21 at the time was really kind of the main like think tank kind of like birthplace of like critiquing charts and really like people sharing content with the explicit purpose of reviewing each other's stuff and trying to make it better via suggestions from the community. So yeah, starting in when I joined R21 Freak in mid 2007 up until when it eventually petered out and died in recent years, I was always very active on there in its heyday, and a lot of my evolution in the earlier years, as far as charting styles and whatnot, owe it to the people that were active on there. Both just the people that didn't even necessarily step themselves, but especially some of my contemporaries at the time, like Zimlord, Moots, and step chart others like that. So that kind of culminated with the TLOES Chapter 1 pack, which Chapter 2, it's coming out any day now. Just you wait.
And I remember playing that in high school. And I'm like, what, 28 now? Like,
Yeah, so that's that pack was kind of I think that pack was like a big turning point, just kind of for 4-panel customs in general. And I think a lot of people would mostly agree that we were kind of
why?
because we were kind of me, Revolver, Zimlord, and Moots were kind of the top four, at least especially in the R21 Freak community. But I think by and large, as far as just kind of maybe I'd say non-stamina content went, were kind of I would say maybe the more popular, more well-known chart authors at the time. And so we all kind of just one day were like just chatting. It's like, hey, should we do something together? Like do a cool like big pack? Because nowadays, what's really cool is collaborative packs are pretty common these days, which is great. You got stuff like 5 guys 1 pack, 3 guys 1 pack, however many guys they keep adding, and a lot of others.
I hear
but,
like a 9 guys is in the future or something like that. That's too many guys. I don't know. I don't think one human could take that. Many guys.
Yeah. So that was. I mean, somebody can fact check me on this if I'm wrong, but I want to say that's like kind of the first big like collab pack that really comes to mind. With that kind of specific focus.
Yeah, all the collab packs I was aware of at the time were mostly like one person was like, "Oh, hey, here's a bunch of charts I like," and then I'm gonna wrap them up and throw them out.
Well, that's more. Yeah, that's like a compilation, not necessarily like. I want to say the one I can think of to its credit was the Ethereal Rebellion. That might have predated TLOES, but I'd have to search the dregs of my backup hard drive to double check that. But yeah, anyway, fairly novel concept at the time, and that was also really the first time where we really kind of set forth the +9 syncing standard. As we are unfortunately still kind of dealing with today, which that's a whole different conversation on why that's dumb, but.
That's just physics, man. Sound goes this many in 0.9 milliseconds. I don't know what
it's physics. Yeah, the Roxor's hard drive polling rate goes at goes burr. but yeah, it's that was really kind of the first pack then that also kind of like adhered to that standard as we started pushing for that. So from there, I would even say like I kind of got into a period of, I don't know, I would almost say kind of like complacency. I mean, I was putting out, content like pretty regularly, and up until Mutems 9, which was, I want to say 2014, I'd kind of really started to ramp it down on, being adventurous and much more straightforward stuff in that kind of era, by and large. And I definitely noticed during that period there was certainly a lot fewer of my charts showing up in tournament packs and whatnot, which was like, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, I do really just make charts because I like making them and try to make them just as something that I would personally enjoy playing.
Yeah.
And the fact that other people enjoy is kind of an added bonus.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was what really the tipping point after that when I really started kind of diving into the new meta was ECFA 2018. I want to say, was it 2018 or 2019? Can't remember. I think I went 2018. 2018,
Probably
yeah.
2018, because I think 2019 is when I saw Lament Configuration, which has, wonky tech, which
Yeah,
would
so-
I would assume be after this.
It was really ECFA 2018 where I started playing some of that content where I was like, ooh, some of this is really fun. Started really looking at more adventurous, like, foot switch usage and starting to do a lot more bracket stuff. So, yeah, started using that, and the tech showcase, technical showcase, SimFile contests were a lot of fun too. And to kind of tie it all back together, it's really cool that nowadays we're at a point where you really can't tell who's going to win a step chart competition. There's so many talented step chart authors nowadays. Again, back in the R21 Freak days, it was pretty predictable who was going to be in the top 5, top 6, And so nowadays, it's like, damn you assholes, I got to bust my ass.
Yeah, no, but that's a good thing, right? And even like
it's a great thing.
And there's a lot more like cross pollination because I think this last technical showcase, Zaya, the stamina step artist, ended up taking one of the top spots in one of the rounds. I forget which one.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I mean, like first technical showcase, you had Chris Chaik, who doesn't even chart all that frequently anymore, and just like took first place in the qualifiers and hadn't even released a chart in a hot minute, and it's just like, damn. People are getting good at charting though. So, and that's cool because really that was what R21 Freaks set out to do anyway. And when the site was in its death throes and we were kind of us like, staff members, admins and moderators were talking about, let's not renew the hosting on there. We were okay with that, honestly, that everything had migrated to Facebook and Discord by that point. And we said, it's cool because the site did what it set out to do, which was to really foster, critical examination and of, custom charts and sharing and critiquing and really kind of pushing the I will say the art form.
Yes, it is an art form. Why does everyone, all the step artists they're all like so sheepish about calling it an art form?
Not me, no. As I say, I know you were mentioning that was going to be something you were going to bring up. Yeah, like is step charting, is our step charts art? Is SimFile authoring an art form? Yes.
Yeah, might as well have a discussion because I guess previous to this and all the interviews, it's kind of a de facto thing. But yes, okay. So then, why does step charting count as art?
Because I want to be an artist.
Good.
No, yeah, it's there's a quote that I really like by a gentleman by the name of might be mangling this Jim Jarmusch.
Okay.
Tell you what, let me pull this up real quick, just so I'm not, paraphrasing.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. You want to have it good. Plus, I'm going to open the door because the cat's yelling at it. Oh, that's you. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you want to be on the show? Want to be on the show? Oh, that's right, Jonathan. That's right. You're going to be... Oh, Jonathan, are step charts art? Yes, they are, aren't they?
Yes,
he loves
unequivocally. All right, so I found the quote. I say, don't be surprised if one of mine makes an appearance. They get louder on this time of night because it's almost feeding time.
Yeah,
but I found the quote. Okay, so I found the quote, and I think this is really cool. So here we go. Jim Jarmusch. Again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing it. So the quote goes, nothing is original. Steal from anywhere that resonates with inspiration or fuels your imagination. Devour old films, new films, music, books, paintings, photographs, poems, dreams, random conversations, architecture, bridges, street signs, trees, clouds, bodies of water, light and shadows. Select only things to steal from that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and theft will be authentic. Authenticity is invaluable, originality is non existent. And don't bother concealing your thievery. Celebrate it if you feel like it. In any case, always remember what Jean-Luc Godard said. It's not where you take things from, it's where you take things to.
Okay. I like that quote. It's a good quote. It's also like very factual.
I think so.
Yeah, no, it's definitely very factual because actually I was reading this book. It's called like fuck, I think it's like the innovation process. I have to remember it. I'm gonna edit it back in. But it was talking about like how innovation doesn't happen in like large strides and stuff like that. It's all very like close, tiny movements that are basically like stealing or working off something that already exists. Which actually I think applies to step charting too, right? Because like
for sure, yeah.
What is like a lot of innovation ends up being like it's like this thing but different in this way, right? Until it eventually comes a new thing, kind of like side switches, right? Side switches are just foot switches, but you're turned to the side, right?
Yeah, and you hear people talk about this all the time too, especially in terms of comparing two charts, two individual songs. Like, oh, well, this one's it's like a burstier version of X, or this one is kind of like XYZ but with more crossovers. And so yeah, it's all relative and it's all comparative. And yeah, those tiny little bits of innovation and evolution, they do kind of happen a little bit over time. It's like you think back to when we first started throwing foot switches and stuff in files, and it's like now they're a lot more commonplace. And not only just in quantity, but I would say, we've gotten better over the years at how we implement certain tech elements like that. And now we don't force them in. They come a little bit more naturally, and they're used much more consistently. And so it just, over time.
Okay, so then I guess to wrap it up, because I guess we didn't explain why that quote applies to step charting. Or I guess
sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, step charting is really if we're being honest, it is a lot of borrowing content. Mm-hmm. Cough, cough. So, and I mean, even me, and I'll freely admit this. The reason why I like that quote so much, I actually included that in the original README file for Mute Sim 6, and I've done this over the years. I'm sure a lot of people have noticed it, and this is why I also, in like README files, I will also like specifically mention and thank people that, first of all, if they reviewed the pack or anything like that, but also people that I've drawn inspiration from, especially when I'm like restepping songs, for example. Just one example I can throw out off the top of my head that everyone probably knows is the little bounce gimmick in Electro World. Like, that is directly lifted from Cosmic Pope's original Electro World chart from like 2008 or 2009. Mm-hmm. Directly lifted.
Yeah.
Like unashamedly,
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I credit him for that, and definitely credited him and any other people that I even if I just restepped a song that somebody else had a well-known chart for, I will still usually give them a shout out because generally there's going to be something about that inspired me, even if I'm like restepping it and making it pretty different.
Yeah, and I think that's a very responsible way to do it, because I think a lot of I guess people or step artists in like the community don't really give too much credit in that sense towards where they're lifting ideas from. Lifting is like the wrong word. I guess they get inspiration from, which is interesting.
Well, a lot of it happens so subconsciously too,
Yeah.
I think that can happen subconsciously too. I mean, there's Christ, you want to hear a fun little factoid that not a lot of people know? I've been telling people this. Think of my Holic chart.
Yep.
One of the things I did very intentionally was all of the brackets in Holic are on the cymbal crashes, as you'll notice if you play the chart, and that's a direct nod to the 2DX chart, where all of the cymbal crashes are on turntable hits.
It is.
It's like that was intentional.
I actually know that 2DX chart.
Here's the cool thing though. What was unconscious, completely subconscious, was the graphics I made for that song compare them, look at them side by side compared to the original DDR background. You're going to notice it is a green abstract background with like an orange silhouetted figure in the middle.
Oh. Yeah,
That was completely unintentional.
Oh.
I realized it like 2 weeks after the fact, like after I'd made those graphics.
That probably
No joke.
No, that probably like made its way into your subconscious, right? And it's like, oh yeah,
I guarantee it. I mean,
when you hear this banger,
been listening to this.
green and orange.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was 100% unintentional. Like I'm sure some people probably don't even believe that, but hand on a stack of Bibles. That was totally. I realized it like 2 or 3 weeks after the fact.
That's cool though.
But yeah, those influences, yeah, they can sometimes just creep into your subconscious and come out in interesting ways.
Yeah, that actually happened to me in college. I was like going on some rant about like putting people in cinnamon mines. It doesn't sound as bad as it was, but I thought it was originally like a totally original idea, and it turns.
What's the timing window on those? That's why I hate Stepmania 5. Those cinnamon mines are so easy to hit.
But I like completely coincidentally, like multiple years after, I happened to be watching The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and the cinnamon mines is like legitimately a plot point in one episode, and I totally didn't remember it, and it just like made its way into my subconscious, which is just very strange. But going back to step arting, so it's interesting. So okay, you are a person.
How many different ways can we verb that noun? By the way, I'm probably going to exclusively call it step arting.
Pumping out the steppy boys.
Hey, I've been doing a lot of step arting lately.
I've actually been noticing this, like as I like research. I'm like doing research for videos that like the term for like stepping or the people who do it has changed so much over time, which is interesting. But can't get into
That's
that.
why, like, there was a point where a Symfile artist was like the most common term, and people were like, that's a little pretentious, and they're like, well, okay, well, Symfile author, and then some people kind of tongue in cheek started saying step chartist, which is kind of a nod to that, and also just a funny portmanteau, which I think is hilarious.
I like them all.
Anyway, you were saying before I so rudely interrupted you.
Okay, the interruptions don't matter. You can fucking edit those away.
So I can say heck. And that'll get edited.
I'm gonna edit it out. That's for you. I'm doing you a favor editing that one out.
Yeah, that one would come back to bite me on a job interview or something. Interview. We watched your step chartist interview. Yeah, we know the portmanteau.
So you, more so than I think anyone else that does step artistry, you revise your step arts.
Never. I have no idea what you're talking about. Never.
No.
It's set in stone once those ones and zeros are in that text document. That's canon.
So I guess like why do you do that?
Well, I mean, exactly for the reasons we were talking about earlier about, evolution and innovation. I liken it to, I know it's not a one-to-one comparison exactly, but I kind of liken it to when a band or an artist will go back and remaster an album. Like technology has improved since then. They can go back and maybe really make it sound closer to what they actually wanted it to sound like back then, but couldn't due to technical limitations, or make it sound better based on new knowledge that they've acquired over the years, since the original recording was made. Or I might liken it to, in some cases, it really is a one-to-one comparison to, say, releasing a software update. I mean, like, there have been a few times where it's like, yeah, there was like a song cut error or something. It's like, in that case, yeah, like that should be updated. But for the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Subjective changes, like the ones where it's like, yeah, I made that chart 7, 8, 10 years ago, and I just want to restep it now. That's been a very difficult itch to ignore over the years, for sure. I mean, attribute it mainly to the fact that I've been doing this for, again, almost 14 goddamn years at this point. It's kind of it's bound to happen. And the other thing too is I feel like I've been not as tied to nostalgia as maybe some people are.
In what sense?
Mainly because I'm a picky asshole, and I like customizing things and changing things and always being on top
Okay.
of stuff, whether it's adding new songs to my machine or whether it's changing the way I chart things. And so a lot of people too, and I have a different relationship with my material than other people do. It's like, for them, it's like, they have only consumed it, whereas, I both consume it and I created it. And so I kind of feel like I have the liberties to say, if I want to change it, it's technically mine.
Oh yeah, it's
you know?
absolutely within your right.
Can't tell me I can't. And it's just difficult, especially for when people really have, say the old chart really drilled into their brain or whatever. And so it's like, and at the end of the day, there's nothing preventing people from just, enjoying whichever version of the 17 that I've done that they prefer, But no, one thing I will note though is that I know a lot of people give me shit for this. Like, and I get it, I do, I really do. But a lot of people don't realize that a lot of stuff hasn't been changed as many times as they really realize, or as they think. It's actually probably been less than they think, and it's really more of an issue of them just not realizing that there was a revised version, or that the revised version actually came out a lot longer ago than they realize. Matter of fact, if you look at the site where I've got all my stuff hosted, I have listed like the last time whatever was edited. For example, like Mute Sims 8, 9, and X have never been changed. The last time I really did major pack updates was 2017, like 4 years ago at this point almost. So I'd like to hope that I'm eventually getting to the point where I won't need to feel the urge to keep changing things. But especially with the older stuff, it's just really hard to resist that urge, because again, we're talking about some of this stuff is stuff that I made in like, my first pack was released in 2009, March 2009, as a matter of fact, 12 years ago. So it's kind of hard to not look back at that and go, woof.
Yeah.
I could definitely make that better. Because I still like the song, but then I'm like, the chart hasn't aged well.
Okay.
But like I said, I have a little bit less nostalgia and a little bit more OCD about wanting to change things, just because, it's kind of my, it's my creation that I made, and I just feel like it's malleable and it doesn't have to be something that's set in stone.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, so like in terms of like, I guess like the validity of it, like, yeah, you're totally like within the rights to change it. The
it unfortunately fucks things up, like roof stats,
that's what I was going to
QR
bring
codes.
up. Like in terms of like technology, that like, because they they look at like every byte and make sure that it's like accurate. That
yeah, like the QR hashing and shit. That's
that's
kind of fucks all that up. So apologies to anyone who tries to upload any scores groups.
Yeah, you ain't uploading those. So
yeah, it's really unfortunate too. I mean, that's not even anyone's fault. That's not even my fault, or or Ian's, or anyone else who is involved in any of that, any step of that process. It's kind of a limitation of what our game is, and what our community is capable of, and what the logistics are of setting up a database and stuff like that. So
yeah, setting up a database.
Kind of like, that's one of those. I hate this saying, I really do, but it's one of those. It is what it is,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then, okay, you likened the revision process to remastering an album. So then there's,
in some cases, yeah.
Yeah. So then there's kind of like a flip side of this. I'm gonna use a nerd analogy. In like,
oh, heaven forbid we say anything nerdy in a step arting interview.
So like Star Wars, right? The original Star Wars, especially the first one, has a lot of, I guess, controversy about George Lucas going through and changing timelines or changing plot points or adding special effects and stuff like that, right? And a lot of people, dislike that for many different reasons. But obviously, like, it's his fucking movie; he could do whatever the fuck he wants with it. It seemed like a common theme with the people who complained about it is that, like, hey, you created this story that I hold very dear to myself, and the exact experience, because, like, what about, I guess, those people that have that experience with your step charts, like they have the step charts, because there's a lot of things that you change that aren't minor, right? Like,
Oh, for sure, yeah. In some cases, it's like, literally some of them, it's just I just made nicer graphics. And then there are others that like charts completely
yeah. So
redone.
then,
Yeah.
I guess like because you don't host your old stuff, right? So then I guess like what do you have like any thoughts on like those people who really like I guess enjoyed an old chart of yours that you went back and updated?
Well, like I said, yeah, at the end of the day, it's I can't force anybody to like, throw away the old versions, and I mean, it's kind of how files are on the internet, you
Yeah.
can never really truly
Yep.
delete them, as we know. And I don't know, it's like it's again, I think it's got to concede on both sides. Like, I have to admit that, like, if I see somebody streaming like the old version that has the shitty banner art that I
Mhm.
hate, and I kind of go, ooh, and it's got that, like, bad crossover, like, I have to kind of let that go the same way that anyone else has to be like, okay, he revised Meat
Mhm.
Sims 3 and I don't like that. Yeah, you kind of got to let that go too. So that's at the end of the day, the nice thing about our stupid open source dance game is that we can kind of do whatever the fuck we want, which for all its pros and cons at the end of the day is probably
Yeah.
can't complain. Can really do whatever you want. So
Okay.
I'll do what I want. I'll revise my shit, and if you enjoy the old stuff, hey, I guess I got to say thanks for at
Mhm.
least enjoying my content in any capacity. So,
Okay.
but seriously, some of the old banners are like really really bad.
There's kind of like a I guess a synergy in like how like the art sits in a theme, right? Because like your older art was a lot louder, more like kind of DeviantArt graphic-y, and that kind of sits well like ITG3 theme with like all that shit blasting in your face. But now your stuff is way more minimal, which melds in very well with like Digital Dance or Waterfall or Simply Love, you know.
Yeah, and so that's actually, this leads in perfectly to what I was going to say on the subject too. That's another interesting thing to look at in terms of evolution. Yeah, back in the olden days of step arting, it was the old Zimlord, gradient overlay, double stroke, and drowned it in layer effects, and I mean, a lot of times it worked great, and some of it still looks good to this day, and then other times it's like, did we really need that outer glow and that drop
Mhm.
shadow? It's like, ugh. And so what I can pinpoint the exact turning point for me. It was when it came from an unlikely place. It was I happened to post I think like beta or work in progress version of Mute Sim 7 back in whatever year it was, 2012 maybe, probably like 2012 or 2011, on FFR, the forums there, which was not a site that I really frequented or
Mhm.
ever posted on. But then as I was kind of like, people were playing my stuff a lot, I thought, hey, what the heck, we'll go to some of those other sites that I don't really frequent. And like, that's more of a keyboard, file community, but like, there's some crossover, pun
I
fully
posted
intended,
I
on the
posted
chart
in
appeal.
the pad score forum there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I figured, yeah, what the heck, So, some people who enjoy just playing, straightforward index stuff might like it. So I posted there, and unsurprisingly, a fair number of people on there were like, "Oh, that's cool. Glad you joined. We certainly know who you are. We play a fair amount of pad stuff." And one person in particular, I couldn't tell you who it was. You could probably go look it up and find the thread. It's probably still up there, but I got kind of torn apart by one particular user. Now, they weren't a total jerk or anything about it, but they were like, "Yo, these graphics aren't good," which was funny to me because it was kind of like I wasn't super offended, but I was kind of taken aback because at the time I was like, I wouldn't say I was the best like graphics maker in the ITG community, but I was certainly considered among the best. And I was like, I think these are pretty fucking good. And he's like, nah, they're kind of
Oh
shitty
no.
actually. And what he didn't know, it was great though. It was great. And here's the thing, like, it was that point in my stepping career, if you want to call it that, the feedback starts to taper off. In the earlier days, there's a lot of room for improvement, and it kind of gets to a point where people these days, especially, maybe like don't have as much to critique, which could be a good thing because maybe the chart's just really good right away, or maybe it's just because people assume it's so and so. I don't need to critique their shit. It's sudsy, it's Fraxtal. I don't need to. There's not going to be any mistakes, so why even bother? And so this guy, I should say this person, they posted just some examples of some of the artwork that were just current keyboard files, and there was some really cool stuff, much cleaner, much closer to what we do nowadays, more by and large in the IATG community, and so that really kind of got me thinking. And you can definitely see the evolution if you look back to, I think Mute Sims 8 would be the oldest pack that still has all of its original as released artwork. And what I did was I tore everything down and really started from scratch as far as what I was doing with graphics. And like it went to a phase at first where it was very minimal, very minimal. Sometimes it worked great, so other times it was like, you could have done a little bit more, But from there, we kept on building a little bit more, and especially, as I just mentioned, like Fraxtal and Sudsy are probably the two I would mention right away as far as like influences with text effects and whatnot in graphics. Before not even talking about step charts, but started trying to incorporate more stylistic flair and slightly more adventurous stuff. You can still do layer effects and more complex things without making it look busy or really kind of defaulting to that older style again, drowning it in layer effects that are just there. And think I and a lot of other people have reached a real happy medium now. But I think it'd probably be pretty safe to say that people were kind of like resistant to it at first, and they were like, Dave, these are so plain. And in a lot of cases that was very true, but then kind of slowly started to notice, slowly but surely, other people kind of started being like, maybe I don't need double stroke and a drop shadow, and so I think we're just like step charts, we're now at a point where it's like, I couldn't tell you the top 5 graphics makers in the community. There's too many, there's too many good people who are awesome at it now. So again, that was a little bit of a, slow evolution, and the meta changes over time. And luckily we're at a point now where a lot of good examples of good content, and again, we can kind of see what other people are doing and borrow from that.
Interesting.
What was the original question?
I'm sure there was a original question. These all kind of just go out. I don't know that they're not very. They're not very clean.
The original question was: look at these cool fonts from 10 years ago.
We're gonna see some of those cool fonts.
Something else just came to mind in relation to that. I think the other thing too is that, again, as the general, skill level, the average skill level has really escalated, especially in the last 4 years or so. It's a good problem to have, but we are inundated with good content. And so, I'm super guilty of this. Obviously, we see, I'm the idiot who releases packs that have 60 plus songs in them. So a lot of times it's you don't look at every single one. And when you've got, you're a machine owner like you and I, and we've got 9,000, 10,000, 12,000 songs on our machine. It's there's a lot of shit to play there. So yeah, there's a lot of great content out there. So there's not enough time to sit down and type out a 5-paragraph critique of, the step rhetoric in this 11-footer like we used to 10 years ago. But I think in a lot of cases it's not a huge issue because, like I said, really the average skill level has just gone up very, very far. So I think these days, if there is one or two little things where it's oh, this is awesome, 98% perfect, maybe I'd have done a crossover here, and oftentimes that'll get taken into consideration, and we make those tiny changes. But I don't think it's a bad thing. It's the only thing that's unfortunate is that sometimes I think it does make it a little harder for some newer chart authors to maybe get their stuff seen. Like back in the old days when there was far fewer people doing it and far fewer people doing it at a higher level in the R21 Freak days, it was a lot easier for even somebody who had just joined the site to get at least, maybe 2 reviews, 3 reviews from people on their files. And the sheer quantity of content these days makes that a little bit difficult. But again, the flip side, I see people getting into the game and honestly releasing awesome packs. You take a step chart author like Ben Pye, his first pack was amazing. Immediately those charts were going into tournament packs, and it's that was after I think he'd been tinkering around in StepMania for maybe a year at that point. So people are it's evolved to the point now where I think what helps a lot is the other good point. The other good part of having so much good content is I feel like it's easier to know or get a sense of what makes a good chart just because there are so many good examples of it. Like whereas back in the day, when you could count the number of really good step chart authors on one hand and have fingers left over, there's a little bit more of a nebulous concept of anyone can open up the editor and maybe make a pretty damn good chart first try.
A lot of people, I guess, in the community. This is also a thing on the stamina side of the thing. It's like you have the good step artists, like you, Newer One Chief Skittles, Benpai is a good one too. That you all kind of follow a very similar step rhetoric, in terms of what a good chart is. And I'm wondering, like, do you think that's going to lead to a mono? I want to say monotheistic, but that's religion. But kind of like a
I think the word you're looking for is homogenized.
Yeah. Do you think that's going to homogenize the content too much in terms of FA step charting?
I would say not really, because honestly, a lot of the standards for what is considered, we're generalizing here, but what is considered, decent step charting is, even though it's evolved as a whole over the years, it's still very much in style to adhere to whatever trends are going on currently. Even 10 years ago when we weren't getting as fancy with brackets and side switches and stuff, we still had the ideas that, a harder sound is going to be a jump, a held note in the music is going to be a hold, a high-pitched note is going to be a crossover, and at the end, people still will deviate from that. Sometimes you'll be in a situation where, you've been doing jumps for this one sound the entire song, but then you come to a point where you don't want to do a tell jump because the rhythm beforehand leads into a tell jump, and you're like, at this BPM, it'd be a bit of a weird difficulty spike. So I feel like people still have the wherewithal to still think for themselves if they want to deviate from whatever even self-imposed, style that they're going for, or, rhetoric they're following. And I think if history has shown anything, it's there will be generally agreed upon standards, but it certainly doesn't prevent us from, thinking outside the box. I mean, that's how the evolution has happened slowly but surely. And the fact that you're even asking that question, I think, really proves what you were saying before about how it happens in small increments. Like 10 years ago, for a certain thing, let's say like a cymbal crash, I would have, without hesitation done like jump plus 2 mines, and probably the first couple of times I saw people doing brackets all over the place for those, I was like, that's not what you're supposed to do. You got to do a jump with 2 mines.
In the ECFA event, the HS packs, that comment that you said right there, with like, oh, that shouldn't be, a jump in 2 mines. That should be this thing. I guess, do you have any thoughts on that type of thing? If you do.
I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't, borrow from that sometimes. I see, one example that just pops into my head right away is like Steve Reen's Encore chart. That's like it's kind of a meme chart, but it's kind of cool, in what it does. And like we're talking about borrowing bits and pieces, you see that absurd meme down arrow foot switch jack in that meme chart in HS, but then you're like, that would actually fit really well here. Whereas maybe I would have just done a left-right tower or something before, So I think it's cool to do that, and even if I disagree with maybe a chart as a whole, I can still see those cool ideas, appreciate those for what they are, and then maybe someday, if I see fit, maybe incorporate some of that. Maybe that inspires somebody else to be like, oh, I like that little bit where they did that in the chart. I'm going to do that for the whole fucking chart, And so it can go both ways.
That makes sense. But let's look at some charts. It's the chart time of the video.
Oh boy.
Charts. Okay.
Exciting.
So this first one is, you mentioned this earlier in the interview. This is your breakout step chart.
My hit single from 2008.
I love you. So what was the context behind
I'm so
this
proud
one?
of you for getting it right.
Yeah.
So this was for, as I mentioned, this was for the R21 Freak Scholarship Step File competition. That's another fun bit of alliteration there. I was, like I said, I've been on the site for about a year, had released maybe half dozen to a dozen charts, somewhere in there, and saw that this competition was coming up, and this was the first one they did that actually had a cash prize. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I got it. Got to enter this, sure.
How much did you make?
Didn't really think much. I think it was like 115, 120, something like that.
That's pretty big, honestly. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Wow. That's a nice...
Yeah, and in 2008 dollars, that's like 115 to 120 because, you know,
Yeah.
the minimum wage hasn't been raised in our country for like 10 years.
Oh, no, it hasn't. That's...
That's not how inflation works, actually, but...
No.
So yeah, I was just kind of like, you know, looking around for a song to step, looking through my iTunes library, and I had all the Jet Set Radio soundtracks because they fucking slap, obviously. And yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of looking through, and I was like, oh, this would maybe be like, you know, video game soundtracks are always a good go-to for like, you know, steppable stuff. And so I just kind of like just clicking on stuff. I'm like, yeah, this one. I just decided to do it. Came up with a nice, you know, 2-minute edit that I was really happy with, and the chart kind of wrote itself. You know, I'll never forget one of the judges. This was one of the best compliments I've ever received on a step chart, but one of the judges in their reviews wrote, "This seems like the music was written to complement the step chart and not vice versa."
Oh, that's really good.
Which was like, and you know, if you can say that about a step chart, then, you know, it's probably a good chart if you feel that way. If it makes you feel that way, you know, playing
it feels like
so.
a DDR chart where they like made the song for DDR.
Except with a
better chart. But let's dive into it.
Oh boy, I'm excited. That's right. Pop this out here. So, interesting stepwriter choices here.
Okay.
We the hold usage was maybe not something I do these days, but you had the little kind of smaller mini holds there going to the bass notes. The patterning here is really weird. It's very monodirectional, which again, you know, is not something I would do these days.
It reminds me a lot of like those old 2007 era charts, especially like the patterns.
Well, like a lot of the rhythms in this are pretty good. There's a part coming up later where the break beats are just, I really don't know what I was listening to in the headphones. That's definitely some missed rhythms, but like this part, it's like, yeah, it's just going to the, you know, to the bass there, which is fine and dandy. If you can forgive the monodirectional pattern.
Stutter gimmicks, very hot and with it.
Oh yeah, that was the golden era of stutter gimmicks. So going back there, it was interesting. A stylistic choice right in the stutter gimmicks there's just kind of those eighth notes just have crossovers for no real reason, and then the weird anchor pattern on the 16ths is just kind of like, why is that an anchor pattern, you know? Yeah, that's a weird ass anchor. It's like there's a staircase into an anchor.
It's like you wanted to do well, you know, because, you know, back in the day it was either a box. Anchors are kind of like boxes, sorta.
They're like half boxes, kind of almost, and it's like, yeah, there was boxes and staircases. That
so
was
you got your staircase at the beginning, right? Okay, check that off the list. So then you have to go into boxes.
Well, it's like, yeah, the staircase is like, you know, that's easing you into it with, you know, a nice easy pattern. Really ramping up the difficulty with the staircase.
So then you get to this part.
Yeah, some interesting, like, you'll notice one of the things I just did, like, right at the beginning part of there is where there's, like, an up-down jump right there. Right there, you just scrolled past it. Where it's like, the hold is there to kind of guide you, so it's not super ambiguous, technically. but that'd be an example of something I probably wouldn't do these days, with the up down jump like that. The hold makes it less ambiguous, but I'd consider that
So
a no these days. I'd probably change that eighth note above the up down jump, change that to an up arrow to lead into it properly.
Like one of these, doing it live, like one of this. Okay.
Yeah, it's like I would probably do that, and just for neatness' sake, I would have probably extended the hold to the next 16th. But it's kind of I can see why I did it that way. It's the other interval after that with the bass is an eighth note interval, so yeah, maybe cleaner to keep it as an eighth note, not extend it to the 16th there. But we're getting to, I think, probably the coolest part of the chart coming up here. We've kind of teased it a little bit, but right here, that's a foot switch, ladies and gentlemen, in August of 2008, and it's even, although it's not how we would conventionally cue it in years to come, it is cued with the mines there to go with that kind of like, I don't know, if vocalist sounds like they got punched in the stomach or something.
Oh.
I think it's this is a breathtaking step chart.
That's good. Foot switches were not very common back then.
It's like, the patterning certainly does feel like getting punched in the stomach. It's about as pleasant. But so fun fact that little foot switch there was again intentional stylistically, and couldn't even tell you why, but I put it in there, and the judges were kind of thrown off by that. I remember at least one of them was like, "Hey, this part at measure 20 is like there's like a double step," and I'm like, "No, what you're supposed to do is jump over the mines and switch which foot is it's a mine switch. There's not even a term for it at that point. I don't think the term foot switch existed in dance game lexicon.
Definitely
at that
not. At this time, I wouldn't be weird. I totally get it, though. I've had my own run-ins with judges not understanding genius with a certain "say my name" chart.
Sure, yeah, we've all been there. But we come up into the next section here. This has actually got some cute mine usage for the.
Back up here.
Scroll up a tiny bit. Yeah, go to the beginning of this phrase here.
Gotcha.
This kind of the mines in this section, probably not something I would do these days. It's kind of that like abrupt kind of attack on the bass notes, that da-bun, da-ba-dun.
Okay.
And coming up here, we got some more ambiguous patterning that I would not do these days. That jump transition there is rough.
I read that as a crossover when it was going
starting,
through. Yeah.
Yes. Starting with the up arrow after left-right jumps and stuff. Here you can hear there's some break beats that I didn't chart. That was an Afronova there, I think, for no fucking reason. Can we scroll back to that? Actually, I want to see that again. I think I remember we're gonna put an Afronova right here.
Okay, let's there we go. Okay, here we go. Gotta go back to the last hold note. It sounded like it should have been a hold note.
Yeah, so many missed breakbeats. This part is the biggest travesty. Go to the beginning of that section right there. There's so many. Listen to what the percussion's doing, and there's just so many wrong and missed rhythms. Yeah, the beginning of that section right there. That's good.
Wait, that's a little bit down after the Afronovas. Making sure. Okay.
Yeah, you're good. That's good from right there. Yeah, the part coming up after this, the break in the song. Not even close.
No. No, it's not.
Yeah, there's a lot of missed rhythms there. This part's not terribly offensive. Got the mini holds going with the bass there. Got the little percussion fills. They're actually okay as drills. Last part here is actually really cute. I kept this in the newer versions. The little like break gimmick there. It's actually really cute. Of course, you're C-modding it like a cheater.
Who would ever do that?
But yeah, it's just a little gradual BPM slowdown there to a near halt. to accent that little screeching sound. That's actually cute. Like that's I kept that in.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
even
cute.
after I revised the
I
chart
miss when people did
once or
that in their
twice.
step chart, or maybe people still do that in their step charts, and I don't notice because I always play on CMod.
You just don't notice, yeah.
uh,
I mean, yeah, it's that's interesting. I've actually kind of seen a little bit of a resurgence with I think visual gimmicks like that. What's is it Interstellar Travel or Travel to Future? One of those futuristic traveling songs that's in ECFA 2021 where it does like some really cool little scroll speed
mhm.
gimmicks at the beginning. It's like I'm kind of glad to see that start making a revival. And when you think about trends, it's like I wonder if we're going to see a revival of like Zimcore type
Yeah,
stutters and stuff like that. I think people are starting to experiment with like scroll speeds and stuff in
yeah.
SM5, which is really cool.
I
But
think with
this
SM5.
chart,
Sorry,
very
I
good
think with
example.
SM5 that's going to be a lot more of a thing because I hear it's a lot easier to make gimmicks or stutter gimmicks and slowdowns and stuff that.
Very much so, yeah. But yeah, back in the day, this is a really good example of right around the time when the stutter gimmicks were very popular, and I think the first R21 Freak site pack really was the thing that popularized that with got your old Silicon and Dancing
Mhm.
Box and shit like
And you,
that.
this
So
one you revised as well. You restepped this.
yeah, that one certainly got revised. I think I only revised it
Okay.
once in later years, maybe twice.
Where?
I don't know, but yeah, most recently it was probably revised in like 2015
Okay.
to what it is currently if you were to
Do
download
you
the pack.
happen to remember what pack it's in? Probably Mute Sims 1, right?
It's in
Yeah.
Mute
Okay,
Sims
Mute
1.
Sims
Yep,
1.
Mute Sims 1. Yeah,
Um,
which is just called Mute Sims. I mean, didn't append the one because we weren't really
oh,
thinking
actually,
of
now
that.
that we're here, what is your favorite Mute Sims?
Oh, they're all my precious children. That's a tough call. I mean, the meme answer is Mute Sims X just because it's got 69 songs in it, which is pretty nice.
That's really nice.
That was a fun fact about that. Dan, Quietly Turning, specifically added that feature on the song wheel just for that pack, where it displays nice if the number of songs in the folder is 69. That is a separate thing from the what Ian Klatsko, Ian 5V made for the result, the score screen,
That's the other
eval
nice
screen.
meme.
So uh,
I'm glad we have a good innovation culture
exactly.
for
So
nice memes.
serious answer though, I'm really liking the way Mute Sims X2 is shaping up. I mean, it's kind of recency bias, but I think it's got a really good selection of songs and some cool charts. And for all the techie stuff, I'm trying to do like a hard chart that's, more traditional toned down. But push comes to shove, I think 3 and 6 are really two banger packs. 3 was certainly the first one that was really, really popular outside the R21 free community. And 6, I mean, 6 was the one where I realized I needed to start dialing the pack size down a bit because it had 63 songs in it, I want to say. And as you can see,
Yep.
I've clearly learned my lesson.
He did.
But 6 is really good. 6 was 6 includes what would have been my submissions for TLOES Chapter 2, which we were working on but then abandoned because Zimlord and Moots and Revolver actually at the time all got out of stepping. Spooty, fun fact, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Spooty was actually going to be included in TLOES Chapter 2.
Oh.
Fun facts. But all the stuff that I was going to be submitting just made it into Mute Sims 6. And I think a lot of the stuff in there is just really good and aged pretty well. Not a lot from that pack got like rewritten
Okay.
in terms of charts. Believe it or not.
I think you were mentioning to me like there's one where it cuts off where you don't really like revise. I think like that was 6 or 7.
Yeah, like 7 now has been updated pretty recently, and 6 I think I've done anything that I would really want to do. A lot of those I think are, like I said, have aged pretty well, and or at the very least have enough classic flavor that's cool, but they're not like cringy to me now that I want to like really
Yeah.
redo them.
Okay.
6 I would say is really awesome, and it's because it's so goddamn big. There are a lot of kind of like forgotten gems in there that people passed over because again, a lot of content to consume. And 3 I think is just a classic pack too.
Moving on. This next song is actually experimental in presentation. It's lament configuration, right? But to the viewer, this song was actually in the League of Extraordinary Stepmen 1. And it was also actually, why am I saying this?
Wasn't in any of the sequels.
Wasn't any of the sequels. So for this next one, we actually have the original chart and the updated chart in X2, I believe.
Yes, yeah, stepped in, I think, mid-2019, so they were stepped about 9 years apart.
Okay, so on the left, we got the old chart, and on the right, we got the new chart. Please make comments as it goes on. Actually, tell us about...
did you record this on a C mod or on an M mod or X mod?
I believe they're both C mods.
Oh, that's a shame, because this one, the original has your traditional stutter gimmicks, and the new one, although it's C moddable in every tournament, which I think it should be, because I kind of just mainly wanted to fuck around with scroll speeds. And so a lot of people probably don't realize, but the 12 in MuteSims X2 actually does have a lot of gimmicks.
Oh, does it?
It's got a lot, quite a few. About as much as the original chart, I think. It's actually not super important. I'd much rather focus on the step rhetoric. A lot of the gimmick ideas are actually fairly similar to the original chart, so that's actually not the focus. And like I said, from a tournament chart standpoint, I agree on it being C moddable, because the focus is more on the tech and not so much the gimmicks. But maybe we'll see that change in the future. Anyway, yeah, we can look at the patterning and the rhythm choices and the tech for sure. Because there's these two charts are very, very different. Very, very different.
Before we
look at the step count, you can look at the step count right away and see the discrepancy there.
Okay. And then, actually, did you want to make a comment on each of the charts before we started, or you just
I will actually. So, the original chart from 2010 was not like one of the. I wouldn't say it's one of the first foot switch charts, but it was one of the first. Definitely one of my first foot switch charts, and it was one of the first that really kind of had more broad appeal. It was one of the first foot switch charts that really kind of like had very purposeful foot switch usage, as opposed to charts like what we were talking about before we started recording. We were talking about like V-Rosin, which was kind of just a proof of concept, a wacky creation just for the sake of being ridiculous, obviously. But this was a good example of one of the earlier charts that first started saying like, hey, yeah, these are great, and we can toss them in where they're pitch relevant, where they're musically, appropriate. So
I've noticed that it's the same thing with the side switches and the new one too. It's the first like chart that had like very relevant side switches that were consistent.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't take credit for that. If we're talking side switches, definitely Spoody's Central Utopia was certainly the bust out like side switch chart.
Okay.
Which or even chart. Yeah, that was like I think that was like 2013, honestly. 2013, 2014, somewhere around there. Because that was side switches that was like the first side switch chart, or at least the first very popular one. But so I wouldn't say this one was quite as innovative for side switches, but it's an interesting evolution of style, because where I had the basic foot switches in the old chart, you'll notice that's where the side switches are in the new chart. And it's really not even necessarily because the sound is harsher or anything compared to like where because I do use regular foot switches in the new chart too, but they are used in a spot where in the old chart I just had like simple 8-note, two double tap 8 notes on the same arrow. And this was definitely one where the new chart I was like, I wanted to make this as spicy as possible but still tried to keep it like cohesive and coherent. So all right, so yeah, let's take a look at these side by side. The old chart, of course, starts off with the really cool art columns that were all the rage at the time. The rhythms in the beginning here are pretty similar, just obviously the patterning's different. Main difference you'll see is the roll there has now become a 24th drill. Rhythm's still very similar, almost the exact same. That part layered in the sound effects and really stepped. Yeah, if you want to pause it for a second.
Yep.
That's that part there where we had the long hold with the art mines on the old chart, but we actually stepped all the 24th rhythms and stuff. That's a good example of a change stylistically. I wouldn't even say mostly for like the community in general, but for me personally, I used to be of the mindset of I went through my phase of like, yeah, let's step every tiny little sound in the song, and then I kind of realized like, we don't need to go ape shit on that because what's fun versus what's actually necessary in terms of making it as technical as possible. But I think I've loosened my standards or broadened my standards on, what you can really slow down to 0.5 music rate in the editor, and it still actually translates well to, I can tell what that's following when you play it on pad. So yeah, if you want to play it forward here, you'll see part with the long freeze on the old charts. You get those spicier rhythms that come in on the new chart right after here. There's those foot switches.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah, see, it's like even like the little 24th burst there is pretty audible. So I don't know why I was too afraid to step it. And those old charts got the side switches. Really, one of the big things is I was less afraid to just do 24th drills, add some foot speed in there.
Yeah, it looked like you just made it streams in the old chart rather than a drill.
Or it just rolls for those little glitchy bits.
Yeah. I think that's. Do you think that's related to, I guess, the relative skill of players? Because like nowadays, it's a lot less egregious to be doing that.
For sure, absolutely. That's certainly. I mean, yeah, that evolves along with the charting meta. Yeah, so a lot of the rhythms in the chart are actually the same between the two. It's really just the step rhetoric that has changed a lot. Like, we got, again, the art mines in the old chart there. Not something I would really do these days. Most people kind of got sick of those. So there's only a few parts where in the new chart I nowadays would go like, why didn't I step that little part of the percussion, The rhythms are by and large pretty similar. And it's really the step rhetoric that evolved so much. And I mean, we look at the raw step count on the old chart versus the new. A lot of that's from just adding the 24th drills, but in a few cases, it's like I go back sometimes and I'm like, what was I listening to? Like that's a little 24th burst, clear as day there, So it's really interesting to look back at that. And what's funny is these days, and especially when I first released the new chart year and a half, almost 2 years ago, a lot of people were like, I still really like the old chart. And that was, especially back when I first wrote it, I was like, that was one of the best charts I've ever written up until that point. And I was super proud of that, and the song's a banger, so it was just a good chart and song combo. And I don't know, part of evolving is not being afraid to, I don't know, just totally scrap it and do it again. Another example of that, actually another chart from TLOES, was For You, which I did a very drastic reimagining of last year. And that's, I think, in the DLC number 2 for ECFA 2021. And you can kind of see rhythmically a lot of similarities, and the step rhetoric is just kind of like, hey, how much of a fuckface can I be with some side switches and brackets and stuff like that. But yeah, it's interesting to kind of see the meta evolve like that. And you look at them side by side, and it's really fascinating to look at.
So this is the end part where we go over like the context and information. So where can we download your packs? They are, as of now, up-to-date links are at the itgpacks.com spreadsheet. The best place to always go, though, would be my personal sim file site, which is mutesims.tumblr.com. Okay. And there are some other places. I think Stepmania Online has some of the older versions hosted. So, I mean, I guess if you want those older versions, maybe go there. But I do kind of try to be I prefer to be the only person really hosting them, just to hopefully avoid confusion with some of the older versions float around. But mutesims.tumblr.com, that's where anytime I post updates, I've got a nice little update section that says, hey,
added new charts to Mute Sims X2, fixed this, whatever the heck, and recently kind of did a big overhaul on the site and added some other cool new stuff. There's a big section on the main page there of just handy links related to other dance game stuff. Got updated version of my syncing guide, links to like the ECFA, Discord, and all that stuff. Themes like Simply Love, Steve Reen's Waterfall, Taro's Waterfall theme, like a bunch of really relevant, useful stuff too. So you can find some other handy stuff on there. I've got a lot of like assets on other stuff hosted there, like the mass offset adjustment program or like full res like ITG cabinet graphics. So go on there. There's lots of good stuff, not just my mediocre step charts.
Also mediocre. It's fucking some of the best steps. I'll have you know, I play Lament configuration at least twice every set since 2019. This is actually not a joke.
That's awesome.
I say it with a smile, but I fucking love that chart. And then social media, do you stream? I know the answer to that. Where can we find you for streaming?
Well, I mean, a couple of months ago, the answer to this would have been different. But yeah, I'm back on Twitch after taking a really long hiatus last year, twitch.tv/mutesauce. And if you care to stalk me on other social media, pretty much everything else is linked to on there. But I try and stream Tuesdays and Thursday nights around 6 Central. So lately I've been doing a lot of the ECFA 2021 stuff. I'm an old man and I injured my back 2 weeks ago, so I haven't streamed the last week or so, but I do stream console games and stuff too sometimes, but a lot of dance game streams. So yeah, come hang out. It's fun.
Very cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I know one of the questions you asked beforehand, one of the things, talking points, was potentially like, underrated step charts of mine, and hard to say when you've written like upwards of, I've done the math a few times, I think probably close to 1,000 step charts maybe. The one that I thought never got enough love was definitely Ocean Lab Megamix.
I haven't even heard of that chart before. That
one slipped under the radar. That's a really good stamina chart.
I could have downloaded it, but you're only just telling me now, so okay.
we should that's what we should have examined, is all 15
so this
minutes
Ocean Lab Megamix, go download
it. Not to be missed.
Yeah, okay, cool, awesome. Thank you for coming on to the YouTube and being interviewed.
Absolutely, it's been a blast.
Hell yeah. And
let's do it again, and look forward to seeing what other nerds you interview in the future too.
Oh dude, I love interviewing nerds. Anyway,
everybody go play ECFA 2021 and ECS 9.5. Yes. Go have fun. They're great events.
Absolutely. And that's it. And I'm going to hit the stop button.